Cool. So we are officially recording. Welcome everybody to the very first ever Knowledge Drop panel, which is pretty exciting. About Ethereum, Bitcoin, the blockchain, all of this crazy cryptocurrency revolution. And really, I just wanted to do this because we had a Knowledge Drop with Ash a couple months back, who's also very involved in this whole like crypto world. But it's just like the hottest topic that I can remember since topics were a thing. I feel like I'm always finding myself in conversations around it. And now I'm starting to start some of those conversations too, because I've just been finding it so interesting. And before we get into it, and before I introduce our panel or have them introduce themselves, I do want to read a little disclosure. I feel like, it's exciting. It's an exciting topic, and I just want to make sure that none of this comes off as like advice or I'm like pushing anybody in any direction. It's really just to have like an open conversation around the topic. So this is actually verbiage from our very own remote year lawyer, Sam Mateus. So let me just read this real quick before we get into starting this panel. So the information being discussed in this knowledge drop is nothing more than the opinions of the panelists. Neither remote year nor the panelists can assure you that the information is accurate or complete. Remote year and the panelists do not in any way warrant or guarantee the success of any auction you take in reliance on any statements or recommendations from this knowledge drop. And nothing discussed in the knowledge drop should be considered as construed as or relied upon as advice being given by remote year. We're solely facilitating this discussion because it is a topic that the nation has expressed interest in. If you do decide to invest after this discussion, remember that all investments carry risk. You should never invest more than you are willing to lose, and all investment decisions of an individual remain the responsibility of that individual. So yeah, thanks for bearing with me while I just got through that. I just feel like it's important to say because, this is all obviously just the four of us or the three of these people, most of these opinions and their story of how they got involved here. But I do think it's an important issue or an interesting issue, especially super relevant today to get into. So with that said, thanks again for being here, everybody. And to you guys, my lovely panel, and let's get in on the topic. So I don't know if you guys want to start by just introducing yourself, maybe who you are, where you are, the community you're in. And then I'd also be curious about like what you do for work professionally, and then I guess sort of your background as well in the world of cryptocurrency and this whole subject that we're on.
Okay, should I start?
Sure, I can go first. So I'm Nissa Zabo. I'm in New York City right now, so trying to stay warm. I was part of RYOG. Can everybody hear me? I just got a notice. Okay, cool. I was part of RYOG since ending remote year. I moved to New York City. I'm from Denver originally. And I had been here. I was just kind of consulting with high-tech companies, kind of some AI machine learning companies. But kind of cryptocurrency and blockchain had always been, part of the conversations I was having, as part of some Telegram groups, just WhatsApp groups with friends. And, I just had a lot of interest. So I started doing more and more research. And that's kind of what landed me at my company now. I work with a decentralized peer-to-peer global exchange company called AirSwap. And so we're a consensus, if anybody knows about consensus, we're a consensus-backed company. And so I'm kind of running the communications and marketing, which I think is at such an interesting space right now because as there's so much education that is needed around this space, I think the communication around this is very, very necessary and needs to be really clear and can be really complicated. So I've been doing that. I started with AirSwap, consulting with them at the beginning of July and then went full-time with them at the beginning of August, which was just a few months before their token launch. So that's another interesting piece to cryptocurrency and all of that. But yeah, it's my intro. Did I miss any of the questions? No? Okay.
Mateus, you up?
I can go if you want. So
yeah, go ahead.
So I'm Chris. I'm with the Sonder crew we just got into Marrakesh, Morocco, for my work, I'm actually just I'm managing my crypto portfolio, just kind of following the news, latest developments in the space, making any trades that I need to rebalance. I've been in the space since mid 2013. So crypto kind of got on my radar first during the Cyprus bubble in mid 2013, when the Cypriot government was conducting bail-ins on basically confiscating deposits, anything over 100,000. And that basically shot the price of Bitcoin up from $30 to $266 essentially overnight. So that's when it got on my radar, first of all. And before that, I was in FX trading. And essentially after that, I just looked into blockchain, looked into Bitcoin. I kind of waited for the price to come back down. I first got in about $70 of Bitcoin. I've been in the space ever since, just trading, following the latest developments. Yeah.
For those who don't know out there, how much, it was 70 when you got in. What is Bitcoin trading at right now?
About 15,000.
So you did pretty good.
Doing well.
Good idea. Way to go. Way to go, younger Chris. Cool. Thanks, man. Mateus, last up.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So I'm Mateus. I'm from Brazil originally. I'm from Earhart. They are in Buenos Aires right now, but I am in Dubai side tripping, and my girlfriend is living here. So this month I'm staying here. I got acquainted with Bitcoin. I'm 42 years old, so I'm oldest in the group. I also the most veteran because I got acquainted with Bitcoin in 2011 or late 2010. I don't remember. And when I saw it, I said to my girlfriend, actually, this is the biggest invention since the internet. I told her, and she mocked at me, and it was hard to believe at that time. Unfortunately, no, I did buy some Bitcoin under $5 at that time, and I didn't believe it would come to 15,000 or almost 20,000 like it is today. If I believed it at that time, I would be like a billionaire by now. But unfortunately, I didn't keep enough Bitcoins for that goal. But still, I did quite well. And I got acquainted with Bitcoin because originally I'm an investor in another kind of digital asset. For the last 10 years, I've been buying and selling domain names on the internet. So there was a big main bubble way before Bitcoin even existed. And since I had many clients outside my country, Brazil, and I had to bring money to Brazil, and it was quite hard with the traditional means. I buried the most underground forums back in 2010, and someone was talking about this thing, Bitcoin, and I started reading about it, and I got passionate about it since that time. And so I don't consider myself like an expert in NISA and like CGD because they like brief Bitcoin every day. But since for the last 7, almost 8 years, I've been involved in one way or the other. Also because my portfolio of domain names, basically nowadays, they're all based on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And if you are not acquainted with this industry, I'll just leave a link here in the chat that you can have a look later, and how these things have appreciated in value, sometimes maybe even more than Bitcoin itself over the time. And that's it. Nowadays, I keep doing my stuff. I keep reading. I keep involved with Bitcoin. Sometimes I go to conference, but not so much anymore. And I still have my domain business, and I live off it.
Great, man. Well, thank you to the three of you guys for the intros. And for you guys who have joined on the side over here, I see you, attendees. And so that's, we didn't have too much planned outside of introduce yourself and then let's hopefully field a bunch of questions. I have a handful of questions prepared, but I would really love you guys to start using the Q&A box, which you see at the bottom. So feel free if you have any questions for the panelists or something that you're curious about right now in this whole crypto blockchain world and how it's going to affect the future, or these guys, I guess, opinions at least on how they think it might play out in the future. And then the chat box, like Mateus is using, feel free to just share any comments you have with each other in there. But use the question and answer box if you want me to take a question you have to the panel. So I'll start with some of the pre-prepared questions I have, but again, please pop anything you might have in there. So one of the questions I wrote down before this that has been kind of on my mind, and I kind of just alluded to even too, is how do you guys see cryptocurrency and just blockchain technology and the distributed ledger technology? How do you see that playing out into the future? Basically, I know it's like a very vague, broad question, but I guess what are your first thoughts in just terms of like forecasting, 1 year out and then even 5 years out?
I can go. I think that, well, first of all, I think something that's really exciting about this space is there's so many unknowns, so forecasting is really difficult to do. I think, there are some people out there saying like, oh, it'll look like this in 10 years, when I think it's all very speculative. It's fun to speculate, but I don't think we have any clear answers. 1 year out, in my opinion, and this is just speaking more specifically to cryptocurrency and stuff like that, I do think that we've reached a critical mass where it's not going away. I don't think within the next year people will be using it as kind of payment systems or anything like that. I think we'll continue that people will be seeing it as an investment, and I think once we can move away from more people looking to make money specifically, but actually using kind of platforms or things like that, I think that's when it'll take a turn. I do think we're a couple years out from that. It would be really hard to say. I think even up to 5 years, but I do think we're kind of near a hockey stick point where the mass knowledge, kind of like you were saying, of your dad sending you articles, or it was fun. Many of you may know my last name is Szabo. So when I was home for Christmas, my mom was telling me about how people think one of the founders of Bitcoin, his name is Nick Szabo, and so, that's one of the most popular questions I get is, are you related? Are you his daughter? Stuff like that. And so I think as the knowledge and education goes up, I mean, even still, I feel like most people have heard of Bitcoin, but so my company is based on Ethereum. And so once I get, I go Bitcoin, and then I'm like, well, have you heard about Ethereum? There's still a lot of no's or misunderstanding. So I think, we're just in a high education phase right now.
Yeah, I think, as you say, it's still definitely a space in its infancy, and it's a highly speculative space, especially in terms of price and betting on which specific blockchain could ultimately win out overall. And I think that, in my opinion, is the least interesting aspect of the space, all the price discussion and all of that. There's so much potential in terms of the technology itself. I think in the short term, the next 1 or 2 years is going to be really interesting in terms of solving the scalability issue. I think that's the biggest question right now. Who's going to have the best solutions for solving scalability? And that could really drive mass adoption and see which one of these blockchains actually wins out. But if we're talking over the longer term, 5-10 years out, I think the potential of the technology ultimately, especially Ethereum is building kind of more of a platform, and it's all about building this decentralized kind of immutable platform that decentralized applications can be built on top of. And you already see this ecosystem being built out on top of Ethereum with all these decentralized applications. And ultimately, I think this is the most exciting aspect, just in terms of being able to transition society away from this hierarchical crony capitalist system that we have now into something that is like much more horizontal, fair, decentralized, and ultimately from a system of like hierarchical crony capitalism and based around like debt and scarcity, say like 20, 30 years down the road, this is the foundation that's going to be able to like usher in economies of kind of automated abundance and things like that. So I think that's like where things could ideally ultimately go over time. And that's where what I find really interesting about this tech.
Okay, well, I'll ask you guys a question. I'll say the names of a few companies, and you tell me if it rings you a bell. Albatross, Baker Bell, Carlson, Keller Car. What they have in common, they are all car makers in the early 20th century, and they are all defunct by now. So when someone had this great idea of creating a car to substitute horses as a main vehicle of transportation, lots and lots of car makers surged in the United States. And if you bought stocks in any of these companies, you'd have lost 100% of your money. In Wikipedia, they have a list of hundreds and hundreds of such companies. So what it means to me, there will be a lot of competition in the next 2 years, and probably many of the currencies in the crypto that we see today won't be worth anything 10 years from now. Maybe even Bitcoin will be surpassed by other currencies. Ethereum almost did it like a year or so ago, and maybe Ripple will do it. You guys better take a look at it because it's going really fast, and I can't even explain exactly why, but it's happening. It's a fact that you can observe. Even when some people say that it shouldn't even be considered as a cryptocurrency because it's so centralized. So it's very hard to predict the future, and we don't know who will be the winner in this race. You are still in the wide west of cryptocurrencies, and what I think we can tell is that probably 10 years from now, we'll see a lot of emerging technologies involving blockchain and cryptocurrency, and people will be using them mostly seamlessly and without knowing. So this is when the things get really interesting. It's when you start using a technology and you don't even know what is inside it. So we don't ask yourself how a computer works or how the television works or how the internet works. It works. So when we see this happening, then it will be true adoption of the blockchain. It's something that I don't know when it happen, if it's 10 years or 20 years, but I'm pretty sure it will happen.
Great, thanks. And I'm just kind of like a follow-up to some of the points you guys have brought up, because I've heard the thing too about like how just even running like the Bitcoin distributed ledger or something about how it takes like more energy than like a small nation or whatever right now. And it sounds like almost unbelievable, but you guys obviously know more about this than I do. What do you guys know about in terms of, like how the scalability issue of like what the current problem is with scalability and who's trying to solve it, what creative solutions there might be out there that exist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So, like you said, so Bitcoin's proof of work system. Yeah, I heard something the other day, like every single transaction on the Bitcoin network uses up as much energy as a house in the US uses over a year or something like that. Like it's getting to ridiculous levels, and it's completely unsustainable. And I think that's well known within the space. I think proof of work in general is unsustainable, and I think that's why a lot of coins like Ethereum have on their roadmap, they plan to transition to what's called proof of stake, which is essentially, so when we talk of proof of work and proof of stake, these are basically the consensus mechanisms that the network uses to validate transactions and secure the network. it's basically like when you talk about Bitcoin mining, this is the proof of work consensus mechanism. But anyway, it's just completely unsustainable proof of work. And then, so proof of stake is essentially Bitcoin mining without using the hardware intensive, like energy intensive computer hardware to secure the network and validate transactions. So proof of stake, you basically do it virtually, virtual mining. You basically stake your tokens to kind of an online wallet, and you basically put them up as collateral, and these nodes use them to validate the transactions. But essentially it, yeah, just does this without the energy intensive costs of like these big like computer mining hardware mechanisms. So that will basically address the energy issue. But then in terms of scalability, so there's kind of off-chain solutions and on-chain solutions. So on Ethereum, there's the Raiden network, and on Bitcoin, there's the Lightning network, which is kind of like a side blockchain that's going to be able to do transactions off of the main blockchain instantaneously and up to hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. But these side chains aren't really ideal because you're kind of having to put more trust in a third party. And then there's also a third token involved on these side chains. So ideally, you need to be able to scale on chain. And that's what Ethereum is addressing through kind of sharding, it's called, and plasma. And there's different mechanisms for doing on-chain scaling as well. And that's all coming slated for 2018 on Ethereum. And I'm not sure if there's any on-chain solutions for Bitcoin, but yeah.
Well, I'm not very familiar with not familiar, but I'm not very experienced in this particular topic. I would just say that we shouldn't dismiss the Bitcoin and blockchain technology based on current limitations of the technology. Because when people created a computer, it probably a 4-year-old child could beat in arithmetics, and probably that computer would heat up your whole house and require a hell of a water refrigerator. And so these problems, it can over time and will be solved, if not by Bitcoin, by other currencies. There is certainly a problem with scalability of Bitcoin right now, but even if it gets very bad, which is already is, nothing prevents, there's nothing blocking the developers from, for example, changing from proof of work for proof of stake if they want to, if they can reach an agreement. So, and also another thing is, what level of energy consumption do we have for maintaining the current financial system as a whole? How much does the banks as a whole they consume for processing all the wires and transfers around the world? So it's also a lot of energy, and I have never seen an honest comparison between the energy consumed by cryptocurrencies and the energy consumed by the legacy systems that we have. So it's very easy to criticize Bitcoin, but I don't know how it compares to what we have today.
Great, thanks. And so we just have a little over 15 minutes, and we're starting to get some questions in from the people out there right now. So let me start to get into those and continue to pour them in here, guys. So David's asking, for those trading in crypto, are you strictly speculating right now, or do you believe in the utility of the currency itself? So store of value, medium of exchange, etc. I don't know, Nissa, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll go if that's okay. I mean, sure, it's a very volatile market, and a lot of it is speculative. But I will say, knowing the technology before investing would be the wise way to go. Even beyond that, knowing the technology, knowing the team behind it, because it is so new, there are a lot of, quote unquote cowboys in the space, and I just think it's to know what you're getting into. Don't just be throwing money at different things, even for some projects, I won't name a particular project unless someone's really curious, but there's projects that, I was telling some friends of like, oh, I heard this project's, the price is going to be going up, maybe I should buy some, but, end of the day, I don't really believe in the project. And I will say that project went up from $1.20 to about $12, but at first I was like, oh man, maybe I should have bought some. But like I said, end of the day, I don't believe in the longevity of the project, and I don't believe in their tech, and I don't believe in the way they're going about business. So, I suppose it's what you're looking to do. I don't really do much, shorting or day to day. I like to purchase projects I believe in and hold on to them. Buy dips, stuff like that.
For myself, I won't invest in anything that doesn't have long-term fundamental value. And as Nisa said, the biggest thing for me is looking at the team. If there's a quality team behind the project, that's huge. That's like the biggest thing for sure. And then you can look at the utility, if it long-term fundamental value going forward, if there's a use for the project, the token distribution, the number of coins they're doling out and keeping for the team themselves, things like that. But yeah, it's definitely a high risk space, and especially in terms of investing in niche projects, niche tokens. It's so early on. Like in my opinion, I would absolutely recommend having 80% of your portfolio in the top two like legit tokens, like split between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then maybe take 10% of your portfolio and use that, put that into hedges against these coins. So like Dash, I think, is the best hedge against Bitcoin. If anything happens to Bitcoin, Dash should go up, and then maybe some hedges against Ethereum, and then take another 10% of your portfolio and use that as speculative on some of these niche ICOs coming out and things like that. But yeah, the ICO space and the niche utility tokens is extremely high risk just because it's so early on. Their market caps are so tiny. Yes, you can get like massive 200-300% jumps overnight, but I mean, I'd much rather just be in like just the legit like long-term tokens with long-term fundamental value. So.
Awesome. This kind of relates, but it's a follow-up to that. Saying during the whole drop last month, I kept a nominal amount of Bitcoin in GDAX. I'm a newbie, but in general, was it even strategic to have kept my money in there, or should I have pulled it all out? So I guess, Mateus, I don't know if you want to jump into that question, but it kind of relates to what you guys are talking about, just, I guess, general strategy and adoption of like the idea long-term versus playing the shorts and stuff.
I don't know if I heard the question very well. My connection is a little unstable, but I will add to what the previous panelist said. Don't invest what you can't afford to lose. And in my case, I only buy what I'm willing to maintain for a very long time. So sometimes you are buying on emotion and you see the price falling down and you don't really like that coin. You are just on the hype because you saw everyone was buying, and then you can get stuck for a long time, maybe a year or more, or maybe forever with something that is worthless. So for example, I bought Zcash very early this year because I believe in it, and I saw it going down over 50%, and I was keeping it, and now it's worth, I don't know, $600. So in the long run, if you are not very skilled with trading and you don't have a lot of experience with it, I would suggest don't do trading, because it will probably lose a big movement upwards of some coin, and you'll be stuck with fiat currency. And when you see these big movements going up, it's very hard to go down again. So basically, you left a lot of money on the table. So if I had kept my Bitcoins back in 2011, if I had done what I'm saying, I would be much better by now. But anyways, if you want to do trading, okay, okay, then separate 10%, 20% of your whole portfolio only for that purpose. Don't and have something stored in your basement that you cannot touch it, you cannot even access it without taking a 3 hours drive to some place. That's what I recommend.
Yeah, I would just second that. The volatility in this space, it's impossible to call the tops and bottoms. The best way to trade crypto by far is just buy and hold. Play the long-term trends. So I'll make, like I used to day trade back when I first started, and looking back, it would have been much more profitable had I just held the whole time and not been trying to call the tops and bottoms throughout the day, throughout the week. Just make long-term positional trades. Right now I'm making one trade every like 6 months or so, and just totally on the long-term trends. And the last question, was that about keeping your crypto on an exchange?
It was just more around the idea of when it was pretty high mid-December, if it would have been smart to, you guys have kind of answered it, because it's basically like, should I have pulled it all out when it was reaching, high points mid-December before it had this like little crash at the end of the month, but it's already rebounded in a way. So it's kind of like you guys are saying, if you believe in the long-term prospect of this, then just like chill out and hold it and try to, or like Mateus is saying, bury it. Like I actually did this when I was home. I just put whatever I have in this wallet and put it in my parents' basement. And I'm just like, I can't even mess with it now. It's just like in my parents' basement in Wisconsin, and I'm in Argentina. So it's just chilling there until I go home next Christmas.
Let me just add something. It's fine to have an exit strategy. You should have an exit strategy, or you're going to hold Bitcoin until you're 100 years old. So if you go at levels for selling, like I'm going to sell 10% when it reaches $20,000, I'm going to sell another 10% when it hits $30,000. Then you're fine. Then you're going to a very rational way of working in this field. Not having any strategy is the worst that you can do. And sell Bitcoin if it's going up, and buy if it's going up.
Right, awesome. I agree with that. One other thing I was going to add, this may seem very rudimentary, but I've had a lot of friends, I think, especially working in this space and knowing this space, so many of my friends, ask how to get involved and things like that. And I've had a couple of friends say to me like, oh, well, I don't want to buy Bitcoin because it's too expensive. I just want to reiterate the fact, and sorry if this is obvious, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You don't have to buy a whole, Ether. Like you can buy a percentage of some, or if that's what you want to play in. And I'm not saying go buy Bitcoin or go buy Ethereum. I'm just saying don't be tied to those numbers if you want to get involved and put some skin in the game.
True. I definitely do not have a single Bitcoin, but I saw a little piece of one. Cool. We have a couple more interesting questions here that have come in. So Chad's asking, what are the odds that a Fed coin or something might become a thing? He said, I know that Estonia and Vez and a few other countries might be starting this process. So I guess this is like super kind of like on a tangent, but very interesting question.
I mean, I think it's, very possible. And I think it's going to happen. I think it, at the same time, really defeats the purpose of what's going on here. The idea of sort of decentralization. I think not every government, but certain governments, the reason they like having kind of the federal bank, central bank, whatever you want to call it, is it's a control. It's controlling, how much money there is, who has it, things like that. So I think it's very possible. I think governments are going to want to continue to be more involved. But in my opinion, it defeats the purpose.
Yeah, I think this can definitely actually be a theme through 2018. I think we're hearing more and more, especially out of Russia has been talking about it as a way to circumvent US sanctions. Things like this, and then Venezuela wants to launch like a petro-backed cryptocurrency. I think what you need to understand is that central bank-backed cryptocurrencies are not decentralized blockchains. These would be no different than a private database, because there's not like thousands of nodes spread across the world. All the nodes would be controlled by the central bank, meaning that they can change the protocol, they can change the supply, whatever they want to do. They can manipulate it how they want. So it's just a continuation of the status quo. They can continue to manipulate the monetary policy how they see fit. So it's just migrating. It's part of the war on cash, getting rid of cash, everyone onto these decentralized digital cash systems, and it's no different than like online banking and things like that. That these like Fed central bank backed cryptocurrencies would just be they're not decentralized blockchains. So, and I think people will realize that over time. Like the public chains, I think this is a stepping stone for mass adoption onto the public chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So,
I think historically, governments they were able to do whatever the hell they wanted, and for the first time, we have a technology that empowers the normal people, the society, to do what we want. It's the blockchain as a technology or similar technologies. They allow the free flow of information, because money is basically information going from one place to another place. And you cannot stop that. For the first time, we have a technology that really can't be stopped. Even the internet can be stopped and censored, and there are many ways there they can prevent people from expressing their views on the internet. But with blockchain, we cannot do it. So they can launch their coins, they can launch their private blockchains, and some will show because the government still have a lot of power, but there will always be a market and a place for decentralized solutions. This genie is out of the bottle, you can't stop it. If the governments that don't cooperate, that they like, oh, Bitcoin is evil, Bitcoin is illegal, well, we'll just create a black market for cryptocurrencies and the price will go up and people will use it for wherever they want to go, and legal. That's what will happen. And they get and accept it, we'll see much more development than the other ones. That's my opinion.
Great, thanks guys. We have now 4 more questions that came through, and only 3 minutes. So I'll try to get through all 3 of these really quickly so you guys can try to make your answers super tight. First one is, do you really believe blockchain is going to be the future? What are your thoughts about Tangle, Hashgraph, etc.? So as quickly as you can answer that. Nissa, go ahead.
Sorry, can you say the question one more time? What do I think about?
Do you really believe blockchain is going to be the future? And what are your thoughts about Tangle, Hashgraph, etc.? Which I don't know what those things are.
Yeah. So actually, I've been following Hashgraph for quite a while now. I have some friends who are really involved with it. I think it's really exciting. I think it's really new. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. It's all kind of a theory right now. I think there's a lot of bright minds behind it. But I definitely think that, blockchain is here to stay, and it's going to, I feel like a lot of the conversation with blockchain right now is around cryptocurrency, but there are so many applications in every industry that I'm so excited to see how things change and improve. I don't know much about Tangle, or I follow Hashgraph as much as I can, but I don't know if I know enough to do a fair comparison.
I think blockchain is absolutely the future of so many industries. I think it's going to disrupt industries across the board. I think in 10 years, there won't be an industry, a business that is not associated with the blockchain somehow. The whole Internet of Things, everything is going to be built on top of blockchain. In terms of Tangle, I'm not a big fan of the IOTA team in general. The Tangle tech itself is currently supported by this centralized system, they're calling it like training wheels that have yet to come off, and they don't really have a roadmap for taking these centralized training wheels off. In terms of like how Tangle works, as far as I know, not every transaction is broadcast across the entire blockchain. So it's susceptible to regional attack. For example, like an EMP attack, if it takes out like a region of nodes, then those transactions would be lost forever. So I don't really like the long-term prospect. I don't hold it as an investment. I'm not a big fan of IOTA. Hashgraph, I don't know a whole lot about. I just heard about this recently, but from what I just briefly read, it's kind of a proprietary project that is not a decentralized blockchain. So I'm still skeptical on that, but I need to read up on that. So.
Awesome. Mateus, why don't you take this question? Do you use a hardware safe / wallet? And is there a way to avoid the transaction fees that come with like one of the popular sites like Coinbase, which is what this user is using?
Yes, I do use a hardware wallet. The Ledger, there are a couple of hardware wallets on the market. The most popular seems to be Ledger Nano, which is what I use. And it's very safe and secure. And you can basically, it stores your private key inside the hardware, but it never leaves the hardware. So you don't risk losing your private key to hackers, even if someone breaks into your computer. So I definitely recommend buying, and it's very cheap and easy to use. So, and you can store Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many other coins. So definitely go for it. And the second question, what was it?
Is there a way to avoid the transaction fees that come with Coinbase, or is that just sort of the nature of playing in this world?
You can avoid Bitcoin transaction fees, which are quite high right now. But you can compare what exchanges are charging. And as far, I don't do a lot of trading, so I don't know which the best one. But I've heard people saying that GTAX is a better option than Coinbase because it's owned by the same company, but it's more toward the professional investors. So maybe you should give it a try. Maybe CJ and Lisa can tell more about that.
Yeah, just don't use Coinbase.
Yeah, I mean, Coinbase gets a lot of new users because it's, their UI and UX is made for usability.
Yeah.
I will say my company, I'll write the name down here, AirSwap, we will be having our mainnet release this quarter, and we will be starting out with trading ERC20 tokens, and we will have no fees, but you will have to have some of our token, which is AST, to be able to trade. So yes, shameless plug there.
Interesting.
Yeah, decentralized exchanges are going to be big in 2018, and I think that's one of the major issues with the space right now is it's even happening right now with all the volume and adoption coming into the space. A lot of people who want to get into the space can't even sign up. I know Coinbase is taking on like hundreds of thousands of new signups, per week or something. And a lot of the major exchanges are just unusable right now. And yeah, through 2018, there's going to be decentralized exchanges coming online. You won't pay any fee. There's no issues with like DDoS attacks, things like that. So yeah, that's all coming, but that's still a major issue.
And if you want to trade, do quick trades without registering in an exchange, there's this great website that probably a lot of people know, Shapeshift.io, where you can exchange coins very, very easily without creating an account.
Awesome.
But you'll be charged a bit of a premium to use that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you guys obviously have a wealth of knowledge, and thanks again for being here and making it this panel. I do have one fun question to end it with, but before we get to that, is it okay if people, obviously there's probably still more questions out there. Is it okay if people reach out to you guys on Slack if they have further questions?
Definitely. Anytime.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, just find Mateus, Lisa, or Christu on Slack, and they're happy that elaborate more on some of the stuff we've already gotten into today. But the last fun question coming from Chris Knight, one of my RY, fellow dreamer homies, is asking, what do you think or hope that your first big tangible purchase will be from what you've made with cryptocurrency, or maybe what hasn't been? I kind of feel like remote year is yours, Mateus, but
my what? My tangible purchase? My first?
Yeah, your first thing you're gonna like buy with the cryptocurrency earnings.
Well,
that you've made.
I bought a whole trip to Europe back in 2013 of Bitcoin. That's what I did.
Pretty good.
30 Europe.
Chris, listen.
I guess I look at that world a little bit differently. I believe in this idea of kind of tokenization, and so we'll use, different, everything will have a token, and you'll use tokens to purchase, so it won't be like, converting my Bitcoin to fiat or something like that. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I spend all my money on travel and food, so probably that. Maybe a house. That would be a dream, I guess.
Awesome. Chris?
Well, I mean, I'm paying for remote right now with my crypto earnings. Maybe a new car when I get back home. I don't know.
Awesome.
And my question to Travis, why doesn't remote here accept Bitcoin yet?
I don't know if, the leadership team is going to watch this video someday, but it's not a bad idea. We'll see if that is the way that we go in the future, or, other companies start to adopt that too. I think it's a super, super interesting idea. But yeah, again, thank you guys. Thank you for everybody who joined out there. And this will be recorded, or it has been getting recorded, and so we'll make sure it ends up in the Knowledge Drop archive. If you guys want to share with anybody that's interested in this topic, or if you want to watch it again, or share with anybody in your community. But thanks again, and thank you guys for being the panel. You guys were awesome. And happy 2018, everybody. We'll see you 2 weeks from now.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Bye.